These are Nebraska corn farmers. They work in acres, not hours, harvesting the energy and climate solutions the world needs. We are proud to stand with you.
The success of tomorrow's soy industry depends on the actions we take today. The future is here, and the time to move is now.
Market Journal Television for Agricultural Business Decisions is a presentation of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources in partnership with the Nebraska Rural Radio Association. Promotional support provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine and partial funding provided by the Nebraska Soybean Board and the Nebraska Corn Board.
Hi everyone, I'm Bryce Duskett, and thank you very much for joining us today on Market Journal. An uncommon wheat disease in Nebraska is causing some concern for those viewers in the Panhandle. We'll discuss what steps wheat producers may soon want to take. Doug Simon will join the program a bit later to discuss the latest developments and trends he's seeing in the grain markets. Plus, rainfalls across the heartland, bringing more relief from drought, but causing some planting delays. Eric Hunt is going to stop by on the program to give us a look at the latest when it comes to weather. Those stories are straight ahead on Market Journal, but we'll begin here as we like to do so during the growing season. We head out and into the field. In this week's update, we are once again sidelined by Mother Nature. Those rains that I mentioned kept Cairo, Nebraska corn and soybean farmer Michael Dibburn out of the field. He tells us just how much rain his area has seen. And Michael, it's another week when we're talking with the producer. Should be talking about planting progress, but once again bringing up the fact that rain is leading to some delays. Let me ask you this. When did you receive rain last, and how much rain did you get so far over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bryce. Yeah, like you said, we're at a bit of a standstill right now. About 2 weeks ago tomorrow, we received about 3 3/4 inches in that big rain that came through a lot of the area. And most of it soaked in, luckily. And then about a week after that, it was 1 3/4 inches. And this last event, Monday night, it was only about 1/4 inch, 30 hundredths. And so, it looked like it was another inch with how much the ground was saturated. But luckily, we've been pretty clear days ever since. The wind's been blowing, so hoping to get going hopefully today, but probably tomorrow.
Where do you sit when it comes to your planting progress? At least ahead of this rain, where do you plan to resume at?
Yeah, so we're just over about 3/4 done. Started with the soybeans and the corn at the same time, so the soybeans got done, and now we're sitting about 1/4 to 2/3 left in the corn to do, and then a little bit of seed corn after that. So hopefully, probably beginning of next week, we'll have it wrapped up.
As you were gearing up for the 2024 planting season, anything happen over the past couple of years that you were trying to prepare for when it comes to your seed selection and planting window? Anything in particular stand out to you, Michael?
Well, something that'll stay standing for the most part. As we all know here in Nebraska, the wind wants to blow a lot, and doesn't always want to blow at the not that there's a great time for it to blow, but I personally, I'm not always. We'll mix in a few race horses here, but you got to get something that's going to stand. It does no good laying in the field as much as it does in the bin. So something we can good standability, trying to just hit that just right in the middle. Good standability, but also good yielding.
Follow along with your planting progress over your Twitter feed the last couple of weeks. Looks like perhaps you've got some technology in your planter. You're going, what, 7.5 miles per hour through the field?
Yeah, that's speed planter. They've gotten a lot more common on the countryside this year. The old adage is that you could go 10 miles an hour, but I like to be a little bit more conservative and don't bounce out of the tractor seat. So we usually shoot for that about 7.5, 8 miles an hour. The Thursday, though, I will admit, with the rain coming, I did have to bump it up to about 9 just to get the field done. But It's good to have, but you don't always have to go 10 miles.
Thanks to Michael for that update. In addition to serving on the Nebraska Corn Growers Association board, he's also a graduate of the Nebraska LEAD program. I bring that up because LEAD is currently recruiting for their next class. It's an opportunity to dive a bit deeper into agricultural leadership and share with you some experiences in different parts of the world. This program is recognized both statewide and nationally as an innovative organization that has improved Nebraska in many ways. With more than 1,100 alumni now, it has been shaping agricultural leadership in Nebraska for decades.
You know, we're always recruiting, but we really ramp up our recruiting efforts this time of the year. We are looking for recruits for Nebraska LEAD Class 43. That would begin their adventure this September. And so for those men and women out there, generally between the ages of 25 and 55, that are involved in production, agriculture, agribusiness, if you're thinking about wanting to start filling that toolbox with those leadership skills that are necessary to be the advocate and the spokesperson for Nebraska agriculture, check us out. Our application deadline is June 15th, and then in July, what we do and what we've always done is we'll hold 5 interviews on a regional level. We divide the state into 5 geographic areas. We want to ensure that we have representation from all parts of Nebraska, and so those interviews will take place in Ogallala, Grand Island, Burwell, Wayne, and here in Lincoln. Then what happens, you know, usually the first part of August, the Nebraska Agricultural Leadership Council will have their first board meeting of the new year, and they'll review those applications, and then they will officially then be sending out letters inviting applicants, those that have went through the interview process, to participate in LEAD Class 43.
Beyond the time and dedication required to excel in this program, accepted applicants will pay a fee for the 2-year experience. However, that price includes the immersive travel and study in Nebraska, across the nation, and around the world.
Well, the Nebraska LEAD program is a transformational travel and experiential leadership development program, and so we have those 12 in-state seminars across the state of Nebraska. The first year they study local, state, and national issues, and that first year includes 10 days to Kansas City, Washington, D.C., and Chicago. The second year, the curriculum builds on that first year, but then that includes the capstone experience, which is that 14 to 16-day international study travel seminar. The tuition is quite minimal for a program like ours. It's $2,500 for the 2 years, and then the job of the Nebraska Ag Leadership Council, the lead director and staff, is to raise another almost $13,000 per person to put them through the program. And we do this through grants and proposals and contracts, and you know, just the generosity of a lot of our supporters out there that support our program with their time, talents, and treasures. Of course, our largest benefactor has always been the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources here at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln.
Now, if you're interested in applying for LEAD Class 43, the application deadline is coming up on June 15th. Another piece of news on the LEAD front. Terry, you just saw him. He is set to retire this summer. The program will welcome a former Market Journal team member as their new director. Curtis Arms will take the reins of LEAD following Terry's 17-year career. Congratulations to Mr. Hejeny. Earlier this week, the University of Nebraska-Lincoln joined U.S. Department of Agriculture officials to announce the development of the National Center for Resilient and Regenerative Precision Agriculture to be housed at Nebraska Innovation Campus. Now, this was a big celebration on Monday, attended by officials from UNL, USDA, and the ag groups here in Nebraska. Plus, nearly all of Nebraska's federal delegation was on hand for the celebration. Market Journal's Bill Dodd was there as well. He brings us this story.
On Monday, officials from the University of Nebraska and the United States Department of Agriculture celebrated the groundbreaking of a new USDA facility they're hopeful will lead to new innovation in agriculture. The new center will be known as the USDA Agricultural Research Service National Center for Resilient and Regenerative Precision Agriculture. This $140 million federally funded facility will house ARS scientists and staff whose work will take agriculture to new heights once construction is completed.
Think about the ag economy in the state. Think about the transformative nature. We heard that today from 30 years ago or 50 years ago. When you think about growing more with less, when we think about everything from ear tags for cattle that allow us to monitor health, to invisible fencing for cattle on the range, to thinking about things like the grain weevil or marble technologies or sentinel fertigation, all all companies now that were ideas that worked with the combine to get us here. That's the kind of value add innovation that I think we're going to see on steroids here with this national center. And then of course with the power of the Institute of Ag and Natural Resources, we're going to have an amazing complement of federal and state scientists working every day to shorten the gap from an idea to a commercial application. It's really quite exciting.
While there's still significant funding to collect for the second phase of the project, which will include a 120,000 square foot lab complex, Senator Deb Fischer was confident those funds would be in place when they're needed.
We'll have in some substantial requests for this year. The Appropriations Committee, our subcommittees are already having hearings, so we're having our public hearings. We had a Milcon VA hearing, we had an Interior hearing. Obviously with agriculture, we're talking about the Farm Bill still, trying to get that done, and this ties in with some opportunities we have with the Farm Bill. I have a couple precision ag bills that will be included in the Farm Bill, and that will tie in here as well. So you just have to pull it all together, and we will have it pulled together when it's time to vote on appropriations.
With this addition to the University of Nebraska's Innovation Campus, hopes are high that we'll see the next era of agriculture emerging right here in the Cornhusker State. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Bill Dodd.
Certainly a lot of dirt being moved there at Nebraska Innovation Campus right now for that project. Stay tuned here on Market Journal. We'll share the latest updates with you when it comes to building progress. Up next, we turn our attention over to the grain markets, and joining us on the desk, Doug Simon from Tredas. Doug, good to see you.
Good afternoon. It's good to see you.
Talk about the grain market, some of the happenings lately, and also get in some risk management advice, hopefully, as part of this broadcast. But size up the corn and soybean markets over the past week or so. Saw a nice rally.
We've had a nice rally. We were at 491 on Monday. Tuesday actually, and beans went up to 1230 in terms of price.
13 better.
Yeah, 13 would be nicer, I know. So we were just talking about that earlier. Corn was down to around 445 earlier, so we've had about a 45-cent rally on the corn side. Beans have rallied about 86 cents. We were down in that 1150 range, earlier this spring. So we've had a nice rally, which has given us an opportunity to step up and make some sales. When we look at 490 corn, 480 corn, you sell some today or earlier in the week or last week. It's where the carry was last year in the market at the time, maybe 20, 25 cents. That's something you can put together and get over $5 corn eventually if you're going to store some of that corn. So it's a nice rally that we've had. So
are we still stuck in the ranges for both corn and soybeans though?
Well, when you look at it, we're in the upper end of the range of both the corn and the beans right now from where we were, and we had such a long drawn out bottom that we put in both of those with the funds were really short, and they had been pressing corn from last October, and beans for that matter. So it's really we haven't had a pretty abrupt rally just here. So we did break out of that low that we put in, and the funds started covering some of those shorts, but they still have a couple hundred shorts on in the corn and have shorts on in the beans and the wheat. So it's nice to see them moving out of some of those positions and giving us higher prices.
You and I are talking ahead of the USDA reports that'll come out to the end of the week. But from your perspective, what has been fueling this rally for both of those markets?
Well, part of it's what's going on in South America. They've had quite a bit of flooding in Rio Grande do Sul, and then have some problems with the Argentine corn crop, a stunt problem. And then also in the U.S., we're a little bit behind on 4 points behind normal on corn planting. Beans actually got off to a fast pace. We're about 4 points ahead, but been pretty wet. Nebraska down in the southeast corner, up in the northeast corner, and then up in northwest Iowa. So there are some areas that are pretty wet. Over in Illinois, they've definitely had more rain than average, but they're not extremely wet like a couple of those areas. Northwest Iowa is probably one of the wetter areas. But that's what's part of it is those funds were so short and everybody was so negative that we finally have got some information that's a little more constructive, not wildly bullish, but at least changing their attitude. Well, risk reward, should they stay with those big short positions?
Talk about the reports, as I mentioned, they'll come out kind of in a limbo here as we broadcast today. But what information will you be paying attention to as those come out?
Well, the big number will be the acre number from the March intentions report that was surveyed on March 1st, and acres on corn were down to about 90 million acres. And they'll use a 181 trend yield, which is normal. So the commercials have been running those numbers in their heads since that came out, or even back in the last February. So the big questions are, I think, will be, with that reduction in corn acres, how many of those are going to go into beans or wheat or cotton? I mean, we already saw that in the report, but when you put up those numbers, they're still using carryout stocks of about 1.8 billion up to about 2.1 billion, which is still pretty big carryover versus the billion, 1 billion that we've been carrying out, in 2019 and 20. So we definitely still have some pretty big, carryout numbers. Now, that all depends what happens to yield, of course. But the export side of it's improved a little bit on both the corn and the bean side. So that's kind of helped draw down some of those carryover stocks. But that'll be really contingent upon what USDA does on Brazil and Argentina, on what they have on crops down there. USDA's been pretty conservative over the last 2 years, so people are wondering to see if they're going to come down with those numbers. But they've been overestimating them previously, so they're reluctant to come down. So we'll see what happens on that.
I mentioned we could talk some risk management here on today's broadcast for producers still with grain in storage right now. Any particular advice or things you're suggesting?
Well, the basis has been really hot the last month as we've gone through into planting, and so that's been pretty good. So if we've had old crop stocks, we've been selling it, taking advantage of the basis. People didn't want to part with it if they hadn't had it hedged. You can buy some call spreads, which give you a way to keep some ownership on it. But new crop wise, like I was saying, we went from that 445 to 490 level. So trying to hit, again, we're looking at risk management and what's your overall portfolio? Like this morning I had a client, I was talking to him, there was a recommendation from somebody that was bearish and another person was bullish. And so how do you make decisions on that? Well, you got to think about what your overall production is, what your crop insurance guarantee is. And there's a really good book by a poker player named Annie Dukes that's called Thinking in Bets. So if you've got $2 million worth of crop here, are you going to just place all your bet in one, on red or whatever, and just say, you got to look at trying to sell over time, try to sell increments. And that's Bob Wisner from the famous Iowa State economist says, you got to start selling your corn when you're starting to put it in the planter box. So that's now. So we got to be making sure that we're selling ahead. And we've had opportunities lately. So I made the analogy, you got to step up to plate and make a swing. Last time I was here, you got to get up to the plate and take a swing at some of these prices for next year because they're decent prices in the big scheme of things.
All right. Final word is yours. What else do you want to share?
Well, the basis levels, I said, like they have backed off about 15 cents on some of the old crops. So they have been improving down at the Gulf, and they've been improving in Brazil and Argentina on both the corn and beans. So that's encouraging too. So there's some fundamental things that are, backdrop that are encouraging. Big picture is going to be what's going to happen with this transition from La Nina from El Nino to the La Nina, and are we going to be warmer, hotter, drier later this summer? So even though I'm telling you to make some sales now, it's not with the idea that the highs are in or anything of that nature, but take a swing at it and get an increment done.
Thanks to Doug for stopping by and giving us his 2 cents and his thoughts on the grain markets this week. Crop biologicals, they have become a buzz term in the agriculture industry, but how do they work? That's an important question being asked right now by those in the ag industry, including ag producers. Many of the products falling into this category are actually being tested on farms throughout Nebraska's extensive on-farm research network. You can learn more about these studies in the latest issue of the Nebraska Farmer. It is now time to check in on weather now with Market Journal Chief Meteorologist Eric Hunt. Eric, we've had a good dose of rain across portions of the state this week, but it looks like it might be warming up as we turn to the week ahead, right?
Thanks, Bryce. Definitely looking at some warmer temperatures this week, particularly across western Nebraska, where we've been a little bit cooler in the last 7 days. Our attention early this week will be this upper level low moving into the southern plains and up into the Great Lakes region. Now, depending exactly how this tracks, right now it currently is expected to stay well south of us and keep the bulk of the precipitation in Kansas and Missouri. If it ends up being a little bit further north, though, then areas along the south of I-80 are likely to maybe pick up certainly a half-inch of rain and maybe upwards of an inch of rain. Precipitation a little bit less likely across northeastern sections of Nebraska, but again, the further north this thing tracks, the greater the likelihood of picking up measurable precipitation in that area as well. Our attention midweek turns to a cold front, which is moving into the region and likely producing precipitation across the eastern 2/3 of the state. And again, there's going to be a chance for maybe upwards of a half-inch to an inch of moisture across portions of south central and eastern Nebraska. That's certainly not a guarantee, but certainly something we have to watch out for. And I think we'll also have to watch out for the potential for some severe weather on Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening in this portion of the state as well. The WPC is not real bullish on precipitation across most of Nebraska, but again, if this upper level low is a little bit further north and this cold front midweek produces more precipitation across eastern Nebraska, these numbers are going to be vastly underinflated. Temperatures, though, should remain relatively warm this week. So we are expecting above average temperature statewide, particularly across western Nebraska. So kind of a reversal of this past week where we've been cooler west and warmer in the east. CPC is expecting it to remain relatively warm across most of the state for the 8 to 14 day outlook. And we also are expecting it to, at least the European model and the GFS are also showing a drier signal across the central Great Plains and western Corn Belt. That would be useful for getting some planting windows open. The CPC, though, is showing some additional precipitation, at least above average precipitation during that same period. So again, I think a lot of this would depend on how much ridging we get in the west, and if we get some decent northwesterly flow. This time of year, northwesterly flow tends to be a little bit drier for us. If that ends up being verifying, which is right now is what's showing up in the European and GFS, then we are likely to be drier than what is shown by the CPC. Through precipitation, again, most of the eastern half of the state picked up over a half inch of rain in the last 7 days. Was some pockets of heavier precipitation across southeastern Nebraska, particularly down here in Richardson County, where some places had over 5 inches of moisture. We also had some severe weather reports, maybe not as much as we maybe could have had on Monday, but definitely we had some tornadoes and some hail and wind damage in parts of the state. The good news, though, with the moisture is this is about as good as the central U.S. has looked for soil moisture in at least a couple of years at this point in the year. Broad sections of Nebraska now are above the 70th percentile for soil moisture. And the good news is we have seen some drought removal. So again, we actually have no severe drought in the state for the first time since June 1st of 2021, and we have seen additional improvements across northeastern Nebraska. Southeastern Nebraska, we did see a little bit of degradation, though, across portions of the southern panhandle, where we have been relatively dry of late. Just to note that we did actually have some sub-freezing temperatures across portions of the panhandle this past weekend, safely above freezing everywhere else. Range conditions generally are pretty good, so the first pasture ratings came out this week, 68% good to excellent. This is showing it very nicely with veg dry. And the GrassCast model, which was released about 7 or 8 days ago, is also showing that we are expecting above average forage production as long as we have average or above average precipitation across most of the state. Soil temperatures generally in the upper 50s to mid 60s statewide. Thanks, and back to you, Bryce.
All righty, thank you, Eric. Appreciate that update. An uncommon wheat disease was detected in the Nebraska Panhandle last year, and with the 2024 crop now out of dormancy, this fungal disease known as Fusarium head blight is something that producers in the Panhandle region should be aware of. Market Journal's Mike Straub digs into this issue. Mike?
Fusarium head blight epidemics occur sporadically in Nebraska due to a variable climate. The disease tends to occur during the years with high rainfall during the grain filling period. It has been observed in rain-fed and irrigated wheat fields as far west as Ogallala.
Fusarium head blight is a disease of wheat. It affects the wheat heads, and it's caused by a fungus called Fusarium. There are several species of Fusarium that cause Fusarium head blight, but the most common one in Nebraska and the United States is called Fusarium graminearum. So that's the pathogen that we see in Nebraska causing Fusarium head blight when environmental conditions are favorable. Last year in 2023, we saw Fusarium head blight in the southern panhandle of Nebraska. We rarely see this disease in the panhandle because there's just not enough moisture in the panhandle for Fusarium head blight to develop. But in 2023, we had a good amount of rainfall in the western Nebraska in general. As everyone remembers, it was very dry in the eastern part of the state, but in the western part, including the panhandle, we had continuous rainfall before and during flowering of wheat. The Fusarium fungus that causes Fusarium head blight infects wheat during flowering. And if we have frequent rainfall 2 to 3 weeks before flowering, and that rainfall is consistent into the flowering period, then the environment is very favorable for infection. So we had that in the southern panhandle, and we had Fusarium head blight there. We rarely see Fusarium head blight in the panhandle.
The potential for outbreaks is possible anywhere in the state that gets heavy rain prior to and during flowering of wheat. Fungicide application should be timed to protect the head. Optimal timing is approximately 15% flowering. Thorough coverage is essential for maximum suppression.
We are having rain, and wheat is right at the flag leaf growth stage in the eastern part of the state. In the western part, it is still a little younger than the flag leaf, but within a couple of weeks or 3 weeks, the wheat will be heading, and then the risk for fusarium head blight will increase if this rainfall continues. So what we recommend for growers when environmental conditions are favorable for fusarium head blight is to prepare to apply a fungicide at early flowering, when about 50% of the heads on the main heads are flowering. And then you go in with a fungicide and apply that fungicide. There are several fungicides that are effective on fusarium head blight, but I'll just name 3. One is called Prosaro Pro, another one is called Miravis S, and another one is called Sphirex.
Unfortunately, scouting for fusarium head blight is not possible, as it's something that suddenly appears in the right climate. The best way to combat this is prevention. Applying fungicide at flowering is recommended.
We don't scout for it because there is no, it's not like rust, say striped rust, where you scout and see a little bit of it and then wait until maybe it's 10% severity, and then you apply a fungicide. Fusarium head blight does not work like that because it just appears suddenly and you see the heads bleached. And so the best way to manage it is to just go in and apply a fungicide at early flowering before symptoms appear. And we have a tool called the Fusarium Risk Tool. If you just Google Fusarium Risk Tool, it will come up, and it's a prediction model that you click on your state. Even within the state, you click in the region, like we are in the Great Plains of the United States, you click there, then you will see the risk of fusarium head blight. And so you will see yellow is low risk, orange is medium risk, and red is high risk.
Be on the lookout for FHB in wheat this season, especially if the weather has provided the right conditions. Fungicide at flowering is the best way to manage this. Referencing the Fusarium Risk Tool is recommended to calculate the risk of fungus on your farm. Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Mike Straub.
Thank you, Mike. If you'd like to learn more on this topic, head on over to cropwatch.unl.edu. That is going to do it for this week's edition of Market Journal. As always, a reminder that if you missed a story, you can follow along on the Market Journal YouTube channel. And as a reminder, I'd appreciate if you'd like and follow us on social media to join in on the conversation. We hope to see you back here next time. But until then, I'm Bryce Duskett, wishing you a safe and productive week.
Join Market Journal online at marketjournal.unl.edu. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Promotional support is provided by the Nebraska Farmer Magazine. Market Journal is produced by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln's Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources.